One, two, 1, 2, 3, 4!
声からして歌え Everybody ダダダダンシンダダ Baby body かき鳴らしてんだぜ Baby love ダダダダンシンダダ Baby body You are the king
Hi, Jace here, or Red Flare, whichever you prefer. Hit that like button, that subscribe button, and let's get on with the Star Wars content we've all been waiting for. Without further ado, I give you Star Wars Visions. Let me preface this with the fact that I am not the biggest Star Wars fan that you will ever meet in your life. Sometimes I wish I was, because the franchise offers so many amazing things. But I am not. I'm far more invested and preoccupied with my comic books, superheroes, and shonen animes to give Star Wars the attention it deserves. However, just because it's not one of the many things that occupy my mind at all times, doesn't mean that I am not a fan. Now, I know at least some of you here have heard my exaggerated opinions over the movies on my playthrough of LEGO Star Wars. I want to make it clear that those were very on-the-moment thoughts without much care put into my words. My feelings on the films are a fair bit more complicated than that. I enjoy watching all of them to some extent. I just realized the flaws many of them have since I'm not as emotionally attached to the franchise as others are. I want to clarify that just because these movies have flaws doesn't mean I can't like them or that I can't enjoy them. The same applies to TV shows, cartoons, and video games. Hardly any of them are perfect, but that's alright with me. They don't have to be for me to have a good time, and I believe nothing exemplifies that concept more than today's topic. Star Wars Visions. A project that takes the Star Wars IP, gives it to multiple different animation studios in Japan, and lets them run wild with it. Creating unique stories within the general setting of Star Wars, yet with their own sense of flair and creative storytelling applied. So much so that only one of these 9 stories has any recognizable characters in them. Every other episode is entirely self-contained, with only some vague references sprinkled here and there in the form of background characters or dialogue. To some, this may be sad since we don't get to see some of our favorite Star Wars characters in anime form, but to me, this is perfect. It really unshackles these stories and allows the studios to tell what they want to tell without having to worry about continuity or anything like that. Right out the gate, if there's one major critique I could ever give these stories, is that there isn't more of them. I wholeheartedly believe I speak for many out there when I say that I would love multiple anime shows, movies, dedicated to these stories told here. These 9 short stories, all of them ranging from 13 minutes to 22, have all the care and passion put into them as one could ever want in their Star Wars. Epic tales of betrayal and hope, of good versus evil, it's all here. It's really good. And today, I'll be going through all these episodes one by one and explaining what I think of them. For better and for worse. We'll be going in the order I enjoy these episodes in, my least liked to my most loved. Please, don't take this as me hating the episodes lower on the list, because honestly, I do enjoy all of them. I just don't vibe with certain ones as much as I do others. As exemplified by my least enjoyed short, Akakiri. This episode is just fine. A fine concept, a fine execution, just fine. There's nothing distinctly memorable about it aside from one aspect that we will get to later. But overall, I think this episode suffers most from a very straightforward issue. One that very easily could have been solved with a bit more forethought put into it. The fact that it was the final episode of this season. That is really my biggest complaint with this episode. Thoughtfully, if you had switched this episode and episode 8 around, then I probably would have placed this episode a bit higher on my list. However, it simply is not good enough to be a season finale episode. The characters are hardly memorable. The action sequences are sparse and not as well choreographed as others, and the actual story itself is depressing, and not in a fun way.
Again, it's not an issue if you had simply swapped out where this episode was in the list. Yet because it's last, things that would have been fine are now not really fine. Before we really get into it though, I'm not worried about spoilers here. My main point of critique for this episode is the ending of the episode. So if you're afraid of spoilers, then consider this your warning, okay? Okay. The ending is bleak. It lacks any kind of hope. The main hero loses and falls to the dark side of the Force. Why? Because of underdeveloped feelings for the main female lead. I see this as such a big issue because Star Wars was built on the principle of hope, a fact that many of the episodes prior realized and used to fantastic effect to tell incredible stories. So, the fact that the one episode to try and delve into the darker side of things, to not have that hope, is one of the most underwhelming episodes in the series so far. It leaves me to believe that it really should have tried to focus on a sense of hope. As it is now, I simply do not care for the story it told. That said, there is one big positive I will give this episode, and that positive comes at the end of it. I can't show this because screenshots and clips are a big no-no for Windows users like me, so I'm gonna kinda have to set the scene here. When the hero is at his lowest, the entire screen is covered in an impressive red light at the end of it. It's a genuinely beautiful scene, accompanied by excellent voice acting and... Okay, well, the background music is a bit too spunky for such a dark scene. It doesn't convey the tragedy very well. That aside, the scene itself works. It really does, but it's bogged down by the rest of the episode being so boring, lackluster on basically all fronts. Its issues aside though, it's still an alright episode. It's not unwatchable by any means, but it's also not one I think I'll be rewatching anytime soon for any reason. 4 out of 10 for me. But now, let's move on to a slightly better episode that I did also enjoy. TOB1. The reason I'm not a fan of this episode, despite the incredible animation on display, is simply the tone and story it's trying to tell. It gives me a lot of Astro Boy vibes, with a bit of Mega Man sprinkled in, which is fine, but just not something that interests me in a Star Wars story. It does not help that the story is super predictable, and that I do not find the main character, TOB1, or Toby, to be enjoyable to watch himself. Really, this is down to personal preference of not liking these stories with this kind of protagonist. It isn't the episode's fault that it doesn't appeal to me the same way as the others do. I'm sure it has its audience. That said, I do actually have some positives to share about this episode. For one, the animation is simply stellar. Amazing. From start to end, I was never let down on that front, aside from a few things that were weird in fight scenes. Sure, the overall cartoony designs aren't my favorite, but they allow for so much expression and fluidity. I can, and will, always appreciate such fine art. The other detail of this episode that I love is the Japanese dubbing of it. Why? Well, for one simple reason. Masako Nozawa, the voice of Goku, is Toby. Now, if you don't know, I am a massive Goku fan, so hearing her voice, even through other characters, is always a fantastic treat. She's a genuinely skilled voice actor, and I'm very biased to enjoy her work. No disrespect to the English dub, but how could one ever compare? They can't. End of discussion. So frankly, this episode is one that can hit or miss depending on the person. There's nothing inherently wrong with it, it just might not be what people want to watch out of their Star Wars. It could not scratch my itch, but I can see it really could have scratched someone else's. 5.5 out of 10, good at what it is, just not for me. So next up, we have The Duel. This is the part where we get into the episodes that I honestly really loved and enjoyed. Like from here on, it is purely personal enjoyment rather than anything else. Sure, I'll be a bit critical to all of them to try and justify this list going forward, but be very aware that some of my picks moving forward will not be as objectively good as those below. Okay, so, God, this episode is so fucking nice to look at. Like, let's just get that out of the way now. This episode's aesthetic is everything. I love it. The same 3D anime art style used with Batman only a few years ago for Batman Ninja works very well here. Hell, it works even better because of the black and white look. Though the filter used to add the grain and TV static makes some shots hard to see in these harsh shadows, the stylistic choice ultimately adds a lot more than it takes away, however. Though sometimes when a character isn't in the focus, they can act like NPCs from a PS2 game. This is distracting, but also very funny. It's also just some background characters, so it really isn't that bothering or distracting unless you're specifically looking for it like I was. The story being told here is very simple and leaves a lot of room for expansion if they ever decide to return for it. It's a very classic tale of a wary old traveler coming across a village in need of some help, decides to help, and does so in amazingly badass fashion. We get little to no information on the traveler, being called a Ronin rather than an actual name. Ronin typically referring to a masterless samurai, can also be interpreted as simply masterless Jedi in this case, especially since he seems to be disappointed in himself for not actually being a Jedi, as other people call him. The Ronin is a fascinating character and an interesting take on the world of Star Wars, though some may find it a bit too similar to The Mandalorian, or they may find it as The Mandalorian taken to the cultural extreme. Either way, I had a great time watching this episode. Simplicity that is highlighted with complexities. It's fun, a great first episode to these shorts, an amazing season starter. 8 out of 10. Now, let's see about my next one. Now then, let us see about The Village Bride. Right off the bat, this episode has the best musical score out of all of them. Not to knock on the others, but the music is very atmospheric and very lovely in this short. It's used to fantastic effect and adds to the visuals in every way. The soundtrack is right there whenever we get a landscape scene, giving a true sense of awe to every breeze of the wind. It really goes to show how pivotal music is to make a scene stand out. So with this great music combined with these stellar visuals already makes this a really special episode. This is also the first time in these shorts where we get a slightly more complicated plot with more subtle characters. It would not be the last time, but episode 4 sets a standard for others that follow. The main character of this short being a great example of subtle character work. She's one of those very stoic types and those kinds of characters that are always hard to get right. I've also watched the episode multiple times and have yet to figure out her name. The Jedi, a Padawan as her hair tie suggests, seems to have recently lost her master. Maybe from Order 66? No idea. And that's probably one of the episode's most significant problems and greatest tools. The fact that there's so much we don't know about this character, her story, her relationships, is a fantastic incentive to keep watching. If only there were more of it to watch. I have a conspiracy theory that these episodes are just backdoor pilots to let these studios make fully fledged Star Wars animes. If that's true, I'm all about it. But knowing my luck, not happening, sadly. Maybe, probably, hopefully. Anyway, enough of that talk. Let's take a quick moment to talk about the visuals, because I really love what they're going for here, especially with the line art. Characters' skin and clothing are outlined black as is tradition, but other accessories and hair are all outlined in different darker colors. It adds a lot of visual variety to fantastic character designs. Seriously, the main Jedi, peak design. 100% cannot be topped. I have spoken. It's a genuinely amazing standalone episode, That very quickly could have been my favorite. 8 out of 10! I love it immensely. So, the next one that I love is... The Ninth Jedi. A little bit of mystery, a little bit of proper character building, a little bit of thriller, a little bit of action. This episode has a little bit of everything, and I believe it pulls it off all amazingly well. The story here is one that will emotionally invest you from the start. It's another tale of Jedi that survived Order 66, who have all come together to try and rebuild the Order, brought to a very cool looking location by a very edgy old man through the promise of lightsabers. Yet, the story does not follow them until later, and instead focuses more on our lead heroine, Kara, as she struggles to get the lightsabers crafted by her captured father to the Jedi. With unsurprising quality animation, she runs away from troopers to deliver the sabers. Of course, she gets away and all that, but she shows to be a very crafty and cunning character that knows the land by heart. And if you thought this episode was going to be straightforward, you would be very wrong. There's an excellent, well-built-up twist near the end of the episode. It subverts expectations in a way that doesn't make the audience feel like idiots for trying to figure out the mystery, but instead really rewards them for thinking outside the box, as well as a little bit inside the box, because I'm going to be real, while I am kind of hyping up the twist, it is pretty expected if you know what to look for. Still, it is great. There's just enough hints there that could be the case, while still leaning towards what you originally expect. So all the way up into the end, there's this real sense of, really that, or is it this? Like you never know which way the coin is going to flip, and it's kind of that suspense that makes this episode very much worth it. On my first watch, I had a suspicious feeling about what was going on, and was greatly satisfied when that feeling was met with honesty. This episode did not have to lie or hide to trick the audience. It instead played to familiar Star Wars tropes and reworked them. It used subtle imagery and phrases very effectively. Even the score was used in subtle hints. Not as compelling or grand as the prior episodes, but the music still got to me. 8 out of 10! Great mystery filled with drama, suspense, and ends off with a fair bit of hope, just as any good Star Wars product should. Hope, which is something the next one entirely builds off of. I present to you my next pick, The Twins. My god, how does one describe the twins without coming off as absolutely insane? Like, this is the most nonsensical, batshit crazy, logic-defying story out of every single one of these episodes, and it ain't even close. It runs purely on the rule of cool. Breathing in space? Cool. Using the Force lightning to help you win a game of tug-of-war? Cool. Lightsaber whips and lasers that flail around like fucking jump ropes? Cool. Turning those whips and lasers into standard lightsabers and taking your training from General Grievous a little bit too seriously? Hella cool. Getting tossed further into space and still breathing? Even cooler. Riding on top of your X-Wing space jet about to go into hyperdrive in order to use your super expanding and massively powerful lightsaber to destroy the Kyber crystal, currently overwhelming your sister while also killing thousands of stormtroopers and surviving the hyperspace jump all at the same time? What the fuck even is logic anymore? Let's fucking go! The one thing that is consistent about this episode is that it's absolutely not consistent at all, which I believe is pretty cool. Like, I do not need concrete logic to enjoy a story. This episode understands that, and instead of keeping to the logic of Star Wars as a whole, it is heavily emotional based tale with a boy trying to save his sister from her own ambitions. Yeah, the animation is probably some of the best in the entire series. That's a given. This is Studio Trigger, the same guys behind Gurren Lagann, Kill la Kill, probably a lot more that I don't know that I'm not naming right now. Oh yeah, Promare. Also Promare. Definitely Promare. Like, tell me the main character isn't just straight up Leo from Promare. But behind all of that amazing animation is a real passion for Star Wars and the franchise's own themes. This episode is filled with a sense of good versus evil, with our protagonist, Kare, providing the same sense of hope that Luke Skywalker always had in the movies. So much so that it's hard to believe that he is a child born of the dark side when he's going out of his way to save people. His sister, Am, though, I can believe that. A massive freaking psychopath willing to die for her goals others placed onto her. Cocoa for Cocoa Puffs, and I've fallen in love with her. Not literally. Platonically, very platonically. I promise you, I promise you. Hey, no, stop that. Go away. No, leave. Out of here. Go. Shh. So yeah, this episode makes no sense whatsoever, and I love it. 9 out of 10. On to the next one! We go from one of the most nonsensical adaptations of Star Wars to probably the most faithful adaptation in this entire series. More so than both The Village Bride and The Ninth Jedi. An episode with a lot of love and respect given to the prequel era of Star Wars in particular. In the very same vein as fan favorite cartoon The Clone Wars. It's a very straightforward episode with more subtle characters and plants the seeds of future development if the series were to continue down this route. It's an honest story that very well could fit within the actual canon of Star Wars. It is for that fact alone that I would do unspeakable things for a continuing anime or even just a movie. Please, I would. It also doesn't rely on gimmicks or out-of-pocket elements to tell an excellent and reliable story from start to end. It's just a story of a master and his disciple running into an unknown danger and fending it off to the best of their abilities. In the fight scenes, the animation for the movement is slow, calculated, realistic. It's very reminiscent of how Star Wars initially portrayed lightsaber duels way back in the beginning. Yeah, you're not seeing any crazy flips or mind-blowing maneuvers, aside from a few which are really cool and really kinda hype, but you don't need to do those in these fight scenes. It's a battle of wit and skill as much as it is about power. This episode does my absolute favorite thing of leaving off on a hopeful note. Hope in the future generation. Yet that is not all. This episode also leaves on the lesson that no one can fight against time. It will weaken you. So before that happens, you must use it to better yourself. Not for yourself, but for others that may rely on your strength. A unique lesson for a series like Star Wars, especially since so many characters actively give the finger to concepts of aging and death. Yeah, if I know you're thinking of the person I'm thinking, trust me, I know. Yeah, but him aside, what's his name? Come on, he has a name, right? No, he's just called Dance Master. What the fuck? Come on, this is like the coolest dude in the entire episode and I don't even know his name? Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I demand to know the name of this new too tired for your shit dad in Star Wars. Demand, I say! So overall, it deserves my number 3 spot. 9 out of 10, what a fucking banger of an episode. It deserves my number 3 spot 100%, and I would watch this over and over again. Not because I have to or anything, but because I really want to and I genuinely love it. But it is only number 3, which leaves us with 2 more to go. So, without further delay, let's just move on to number 2. My second favorite of all Star Wars visions, Lop Ochō. There is no escaping this episode and its adorable protagonist, Lop, the bunny girl Jedi. Yes, yeah, those are real words that actually just left my mouth. Bunny girl Jedi. Damn it, Japan. Get used to them, cause there really is no better way to describe this fantastic episode. A terrific one that exemplifies so many of the things I personally love about Star Wars. An episode that I feel is most deserving of an ongoing series, despite not being my top pick for one. Let me warn you now that there is a lot that goes on in this episode, far more than in any of the others. From a storytelling perspective, to a character perspective, and especially through a visual perspective. If you really want the whole experience about why this episode is probably the best one of all these present, I highly recommend checking it out for yourself. This episode has drama, high emotional stakes, epic clashes, stunning visuals, and a story about a family at the center of all of it. There really isn't much I can say to do this episode the justice it deserves, but hey, I'll try anyway. Lop is just kind of the best. A young bunny girl from a faraway planet adopted and raised by the Yasaburo clan. A family whose way of life is strikingly similar to traditional Japanese customs. Because of course it is. Yeah, I know that's a point of contention between some people, but I don't care, it's pretty cool. Back to Lop though in particular, all she wants through this entire episode is for her adopted older sister, Ochō, and her adopted father, Yasaburo, to stop fighting each other. Why are they fighting? Because they can't see eye to eye over the Empire's offered support. I say support with quotation marks, because, you know, it's the Empire. Their evil is kind of their thing. So Ochō, Lop's older sister, sees it as a way for their home planet to progress into the future with the rest of the galaxy. Meanwhile, Yasaburo, Lop's father, sees it for what it really is, which we all know, but you know, in his own words, a diplomatic way of taking over. And if you know anything of the Empire, you also know that's exactly what is going on. Right under Ochō's nose as she's further manipulated to the Empire side in a very tragic way. So you can see why Lop is kinda stuck in the middle of this, huh? Yet because she's a character that has seen firsthand the horrors of the Empire before her adoption, Lop is pretty quick to take her father's side of the argument. She knows full well that you can't trust the Empire and like, just look at this motherfucker! He's so sketchy he might as well have Snake written out on a name tag. How Ochō isn't getting any red flags about him is beyond me. But whatever, she's blinded by her own desires, yada yada yada. Desires with a noble intention, but will ultimately pave a pathway to hell, where her sister, our hero, comes in to take care of the mess. By using the family lightsaber and some cool new Jedi powers to beat the ever-loving hell out of Ochō, just like how it should be in any good anime. God bless Naruto Uzumaki. Lie damn, sometimes I don't like when anime does anime things, but sometimes I also really love when anime does anime things. I especially love anime when it looks this damn good. Like this episode has everything good that the other episodes also have, but put together in a way that elevates each aspect to greater heights. The music, animation, cinematography, choreography, voice acting, all of it comes together to make one of the most passionate love letters to Star Wars I have ever seen. Sure, it may not directly mention any of the characters from canon Star Wars or their storylines, but it doesn't need to. The themes are there, the emotions, the feeling that you're watching something bigger than yourself while at the same time being so close to home. Star Wars has always been about bonds, both bound in blood and not. It's been about hope, about friendship, and about the never-ending struggle between the good and the evil in all of us. This is peak Star Wars while having very little to actually do with Star Wars as a whole, and I love that. I really do. And with all that in mind, I have to give this episode, this spectacularly made episode, a solid 10 out of 10. So after that astounding review of episode 8, what episode could compare? What episode could match or even surpass such amazing visual and storytelling? Well, if you have eliminated all the choices made so far and figured out what episode we've yet to do, then I'm pretty sure you're very confused. Surely it couldn't be that episode, could it? It is. You've done your math. You came to the correct answer. My favorite episode out of all of them is, of course, yeah, there's not really a lot about defending this one as my favorite episode, huh? Well, this is my favorite episode, the Tatooine Rhapsody. Over every other episode in this season, the lighthearted music episode is the one I adore the most. And honestly, I am right there with y'all about being confused over this. A big part of me isn't quite sure why I love this episode so much, but there's another part of me that just knows that answer. This episode is fun! Pure fun! There's no other way around it. The ending and all the characters just give me this incredible urge to smile, to shout out "enjoy" with all of the air in my lungs. I can sit down and watch this episode anytime and have an absolute blast. Jay, the main character of the episode, is my favorite character in this entire series. He's a quiet and shy guy with a past that deeply scarred him. A Padawan that survived Order 66, now finding refuge as the lead guitarist and singer of Star Waver. Which, you know, kind of an awkward position to be in when you're being hunted by the Empire. Like, yes, that's entirely the kind of position I'd want. Though, there might be explanations for it, but whatever. So, the story is about a band, right? A band that he and his new friends made to be the best in the galaxy. Star Waver, as I said before. The band is comprised of a few unique individuals, including Guy, a Hutt on the run from Jabba the Hutt. Because he doesn't want to be a part of his big criminal syndicate, which, you know, understandable. I wouldn't want to be a criminal either. Curdy, a rational and compassionate droid. Lan, and Lan, making the 3 torso drummers and the muscle of the group, I assume. Each side having a different personality, yet sharing that same excitement and drive for the band. And lastly, their droid companion, V5, who doesn't like being left out of any of the band's callouts. And it's these characters that are probably the reason why I love this episode so much. In all the others, we focus on 1 or 2 main characters at most. And some would argue that's better, but that's not the argument I'm making. The argument I'm making is that I love this dynamic of a group of friends, outcast misfits that found each other and are planning to do amazing things, moving forward and living their dreams. Now, if you can't tell why that hit me kinda hard, then I recommend taking a closer look at this channel. If there's one way I could describe what I'm trying to do here, it's precisely that. Just me, my friends, fulfilling our creative dreams. So they're really similar, you get me? At the end of the day, despite all of these justifications, there is one reason above all that I placed this episode at the top. Because I liked it more than the rest. More than the beautiful music of episode 4, more than the incredible animation of episode 3, more than the subtle character work and serious stories of episode 7 and 5, or the all-around amazingness of episode 8. Is that really possible that I enjoyed this piece of low-stakes fun more than these grand epic tales of adventure? Yeah, I do. I like Jay more so than any of the other characters. I like the song in this episode, especially for the Japanese dub, but even then, I still do enjoy the English music. Sue me. I know. It's not better than the Japanese, and some I can see the arguments for it being bad, but still, I like it. And I love the aspect of friendship, which is why Tatooine Rhapsody is my top favorite in all of Star Wars Visions. All in all, I have to give this episode a stellar 10 out of 10 based on personal bias, which this entire list is personal bias. I love this episode, I love this entire series, and I'm not the only one that does. I have friends, a lot of them, that also love this series. So, as I finish what I have to say about it all, here's a bit of what they all believe, as well as their favorite episodes. And I am kind of on a time schedule here, so I gotta kind of hurry this last bit along and then get to the conclusion and then finish off the video. You know how that goes. So, without much more delay, I'm going to get right into the first person whose review we are going to read. One of my best friends, fellow dinosaur, and the person who helped me the most with this project. My co-editor and close friend, Fran. I would seriously be interested in seeing another season of new content animated by studios like this. Like said by y'all before, there are a few misses here and there, but when it hits absolutely different and out of the park. It's just great, and no matter what negative things there can be about episodes, I can say that every single one was created with a lot of beautiful animation, with so many varying styles. As someone who doesn't watch anime often, it opens my eyes to seeing so many different styles used by different studios, and I love it. I would definitely enjoy seeing more different studios participate next time in another season. If they hopefully do this again, 8 out of 10, I love Lop. Short, but incredibly sweet. Despite few eps that didn't do it for me, and the runtimes and often very simple stories, this show still got me very hyped and invested. A part of it is 100% from you guys watching it too, and me wanting to catch up and join the convo. But nonetheless, I, someone who watched next to no Star Wars, found myself smiling as I binged the show and still enjoyed myself almost every second of it. The music was great, The animation, barring me not like episodes 1, incredible. At 3, chill the fuck out. And the characters, while simple, like the story, were very effective, getting me hooked and intrigued and wanting to see way more than we got. It's not perfect by any stretch, and the runtime, while making the episodes be a little tighter, was still the main drawback, I feel. Regardless, it was just amazing and hella fun. A 7.5 out of 10 from me. I'm too lazy. My fave was 7. I love the art style, the kinda dark and eerie vibe, and the bad guy was genuinely creepy. Tiny Boba Fett is what saved this show, and he's the only cool character in it. That's my review. I squealed and crapped my hands when I saw him. I enjoyed it. Some are pretty good Star Wars stories with interesting ideas while still holding on to that classic anime feel. Episode 3 is the best example of that. Episode 8, 4, and 5 were my personal favorites overall, especially 8, which had both the art, voice acting, and story I wanted. What saddens me quite a lot, however, was their over-reliance on Jedi and Sith. Most, if not all, the stories focus on those two, and I get why, since this is new and otherwise a lot of fans might not want to watch it or see it as Star Wars. But this is an amazing opportunity to have a story about a smuggler, a stormtrooper, a rebel, or some good old bounty hunting. Even the story about a humanoid droid had to dissolve into basic Sith versus Jedi material. If they do another season, I want some stories about smugglers, about ground battles with stormtroopers or admirals facing off in battle. Mysteries surrounding the Force, bounty hunters doing their job, living on hostile planets. It's such a big opportunity, and it just feels kind of wasted to me. There were only 3 episodes I didn't like, but other than that, I thought it was really good. I like seeing the different styles instead of just one. Overall, I liked the experience. A nice little spin-off. Tatooine Rhapsody, The Village Bride, and The Ninth Jedi are my favorites. All 3 of the latter managed to really showcase how they were different and played on their own strengths. They brought their own new and exciting take on Star Wars, and I genuinely want to see a continuation of each. The Elder was my favorite. Overall, while I think they were well made, I didn't enjoy the show that much, save for The Elder. Overall, I would give the Star Wars Vision series a 7 or 8 out of 10. I love the varying styles of animation and how some of the episodes definitely gave me anime vibes with the fight scenes, plot twists, and story elements. I would say episode 5 is my favorite, even though some of the episodes to me didn't have a good plot and made me want to skip those whole episodes. I would still highly recommend people give Star Wars Visions a try. Motherfucker misunderstood the assignment and gave me a whole ass essay on his own. I didn't bother getting a proper overall thought from him, so, fuck them. So let's say he really liked it and move on. Capital D. Love you, buddy. My friends and acquaintances, everyone. Truly masters of speaking their thoughts. Or, well, at least most of them. On a proper note, though, I appreciate every one of them and their opinions. They've unknowingly helped me out so much in understanding Star Wars Visions as a whole and what it really means to people. Do you want to know a few things that I found out while doing this video? Well, for one, people love Star Wars. That's an obvious statement, right? Well, let me elaborate on that statement. People who genuinely don't watch Star Wars, who aren't active members of the fandom, they still love Star Wars. These people can still sit there and talk for hours at a time discussing Star Wars, a franchise they aren't even that attached to, and they still ramble about it when asked what they love and don't love. For good, for bad, the passion is there all the same. It's a truly remarkable discovery, one that has me seeing Star Wars as a whole in an entirely new light. A new light that is only solidified by the second thing I discovered. The future for entertainment is really bright, isn't it? Especially in terms of Star Wars, but I mean beyond that. Overall, things are really looking up for everyone, it seems. And I mean everyone everywhere. It has never been better to be a geek. And looks like that isn't changing anytime soon. In fact, it's just getting better. We're getting so many amazing TV shows nowadays. TV shows that break boundaries, bringing together so many people. The Boys and Invincible from Amazon. The Witcher from Netflix. All the Marvel TV shows that are still coming out, plus the movies. And last but not least, Star Wars. The Mandalorian was the first actual step in this direction, and I'm glad they decided not to look back with Star Wars Visions. Through this project, I learned that the future is bright. It can get even brighter for everyone. Is that a bit too optimistic of me? Naive even? A lot of people would probably say so. Let me leave off with a question real quick. Do you have that hope? Think about it for a few seconds. Be honest with yourself, and I have that hope. That's my honest answer. And when you're ready to answer, I'll be around in the comments. This is Jace of Team Sarcastic Dinosaur Troopers, signing off. See you in the next video, guys. And, as all Star Wars videos have to end, may the Force be with you.